of my favorite things about GDC is
video games.
There are so many games that I had only briefly heard of or hadn't heard of at all, and I went and I saw them and they were really cool.
Totally.
And we saw a lot of those games
here
at the show. The first game we saw, Bombshell by Interceptor, the same guys that did the Rise of the Triad reboot.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are kind of known for being early 90s first-person shooter fanatics, you know? They were going to do a Duke Nukem reboot before Gearbox got all mad and said, no, you can't do that.
A lot of lawsuits and what have yous, but now it seems like they've come out with something else.
Yeah, not a new IP. This was an idea that 3D Realms was kicking around that never came to fruition.
A long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago, but it's new. It's being completed now. It's the first time it's kind of come out, and it's a third-person shooter, and you are this woman named Bombshell, and it kind of has.
And they call her Shelly.
Shelly, yes. A lot of puns, a lot of like crude jokes,
which we can get into. Like we were talking, like the game itself has a really cool vibe, and like I really like the way he talked about the character, and like that she's a female lead character, but it's not all about like cleavage and like TNA and like sexualized stuff. She's all about just being a badass, and like her face reflects that. She's got like scars from like, I don't know, like it looks like frag like damage in her face.
Right.
I really liked her freckles for some reason. Like she doesn't look traditionally like, you know, that, but like, but then things go against it where it's like she's got the PMS cannon or whatever, and I'm just kind of like, that doesn't really.
Right, it's weird when you say you have this sort of like strong, independent woman who has a rocket launcher called PMS.
Called the PMS, which is like the personal missile system or whatever, but like it's still like a joke about, and I'm kind of like, you're trying to have it both ways, guys.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, but the game itself. Yeah, they wanted to design it like a first-person shooter, but it's isometric.
It's very quick. You can dash all around.
All over.
Lots of explosions.
There's the dash punch move.
A lot of gore, a lot of blood.
Blood, yeah.
The thing that I like about it, though, when I played Rise of the Triad, it's like, okay, it's cool that you guys are trying to bring this style back, but that's kind of all you really achieved. You know, it's just like you did it again. But the progression system in Bombshell sounds really cool. You have 12 different weapons, and each of those weapons levels up independently.
Was it 12 or 8? Whatever. You have a bunch of weapons.
You have a lot of them.
And
let's say that.
And the thing I like about it too is that each weapon has a branching skill tree. So like you can choose this secondary fire mode, and if you make that choice, you got to stick with it.
Right.
Which is cool.
My favorite things is when shooters go for really off-the-wall weapons. It's what I love about Insomniac games.
Yeah.
And here, you can have these bombs that actually shoot out a bunch of little drills that seek out the enemy hearts.
Yeah,
and
I think they're called like
bodies.
Heartbreakers or something like that. Heartburns or something. Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah,
and like a torrent of blood comes out.
Yes. And the other thing is your drone, your little sentry drone, that is actually your arm. So the thing that you're using for most of your weapons, you can actually detach from your body.
Knuckles.
And it will follow you around, which is really cool.
You can detach it and it'll be its own autonomous thing, and then you switch to your Magnum gun, which is pretty cool. It has 3 barrels.
Yeah. I think it's time to move on to Warhammer, which is
Vermintide.
Ridiculous in other ways.
Yes.
It's the end times for Warhammer, and these giant rats are taking over everything, and it's your job to get rid of them. The thing that I love about Warhammer is you just get these giant hammers, and you're actually cleaving the heads off of rodent men. Like, what other game can you do that in?
Because the thing I loved about it was playing as the wood elf with 2 daggers running around, slicing all the heads off of these.
Either way, heads are coming off.
Vermin men, yeah. But the cool thing about the game, it's a first-person co-op.
Yes.
So your friends are in third person. Obviously, you see them, but you're first person. And the cool thing was that you never had that sense of safety. Like,
yes,
you think
that's what I wanted to say.
You think that you killed off all the rat men behind you, and then all of a sudden some poison bomb throwing rat men will show up out of the sewer behind you, and then you're like, and like one of us will be like, oh crap, there's a poison guy behind us, but everyone's moved on, so then you get poison bombed and you die. You can't go off on your own in this game.
Because they're rats, they can actually come out from every crevice. You know, any sewer drain or any like crack in the wall, they're just coming out from all over the place.
And those enemy waves of the really squishy guys were pretty fun because you'll hear like this horn,
Right.
and then hordes of these little guys that you can kill in one shot, but there are so many of them that they overwhelm you.
Right.
It was really exciting every time that happened.
And we only found one grenade during our playthrough, which I accidentally wasted.
Threw into a wall.
I'm gonna say it was the developer's fault. He misguided me. But anyway, yeah. So I think that's cool. You know, we're so used to games giving you a bunch of artillery up front, and I think like finding one grenade and that being the only thing you get in the level is really cool.
Yeah, it was a really cool game. I like the look of it. The feel of it was pretty good. And the thing they were talking about is different weapons. There were, I think, 5 character classes, 4 of which have been revealed. Sort of the heavy hammer knight guy, the wood elf, the witch, who has. What do they call it? Overburn or something like that?
She's a wizard.
Wizard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's an old woman and she's a pyromaniac.
And she's a pyromaniac. And if she uses too much of her magic, she'll burst into flames.
Yes.
Which is a really cool way to like curtail the magic use. And the other one was like
a witch hunter.
Witch hunter. Okay,
yes.
yeah, demon hunter of some kind. Yeah, sort of like guns, stuff like that.
Yeah. Had a really cool hat.
Yeah,
that's all I know about him.
Fifth class they haven't talked about yet. You played another game called Servo. What was that?
Yeah, so you know, awesome games like Warcraft 3 and Age of Mythology.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, they're making that again.
Oh,
those are my favorite types of RTS games because while I like, macroing like a bunch of units as in StarCraft or you know Age of Empires, I really like kind of leading the force with one super unit that you can level up independently.
Absolutely.
And that's what Servo is, and the guys making it are actually a bunch of guys, most of the guys from Ensemble Studios.
Okay.
So the Age of Empires guys, Age of Mythology, that sort of thing. And it's an RTS in the classic sense where you have base building, you have little guys, but the big things in the game are servos and they're giant mechs, and you can have up to 3 of them at a time. And what's cool about the servos is they're fully customizable, so every single part of the servo you can customize. You can give it a different gun, or you can give it different armor, which will give you different benefits and that sort of thing. And in addition to that, the pilots of the servos give you different attributes as well. So there's one guy who can make sort of the creatures that you find, he can make one of them a pet.
Okay.
And so you can just command that thing and it will fight for you.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the other thing that I like is I feel like RTS games, I really love them, but I don't always have the time to sink into them that I would like. What they're really trying to emphasize with Servo is you can play matches in 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
So,
really?
Yeah, it's a lot quicker.
Wow.
Like, you get to the fighting so much faster. The build-up isn't as intense.
Is it all rushing then, or do you have a chance to feel like you can build up your base, or is it...
Right, yeah, so it depends on what map you're fighting on and what pilot you pick. You can actually just rush at each other and see what happens, or if you're a good enough player, you can set up defenses so people can't rush you and you can actually drag out the game a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. But
and there's also co-op mode, where it's kind of a horde mode thing where you and a friend can fight endless waves of enemies.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's just the entire time I was watching the demo, it's like these guys know what was great about those old games, they get it, and they don't want to make a MOBA. They said that over and over again.
Right.
I'm like, yes, okay, great, you get it.
Is there a unit limit that you know of?
So you can have 3 servos.
That's what killed Warcraft 3 for me.
Yeah, Warcraft 3 didn't have.
It was like 80
armies.
guys.
That's actually something I like.
Yeah.
But I can see why it would be.
I just like building up forever and then crushing my enemy.
Absolutely. I don't know what the unit limit is, but you can have 3 servos.
Okay, cool. All right.
The big one.
The one
we kind of geeked out about.
We've been freaking out about it for a while, and we got to see it in action.
Yeah, Sword Coast Legends.
Sword Coast Legends.
To set up the scene, what's fantastic about Sword Coast Legends, it's a D&D game that's reminiscent of the Infinity Engine games like Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment and Icewind Dale and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But, like good old Neverwinter Nights, you can actually have a human DM. So he's controlling the monsters, he's setting up the traps, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you're like, man, I hope this is as cool as it sounds, and it had a lot of promise.
Yeah, it visually looks really good.
Yes.
That was the first thing I noticed, because a lot of top-down isometric games, they look okay, but they don't look great, and this one looks pretty good. And then the single-player campaign seems really in-depth and really robust. The VO was funny and seemed well performed.
The thing that I liked about it is it really captured that sort of tabletop vibe.
Yeah.
The banter between your party
between
members.
the NPC, yeah,
they would comment on things as they were happening, just like a D&D game where they're like, man, I'm not sure this is a good idea.
Right.
Things like that.
And then so we saw the single player campaign, and then they jumped forward and did a human DM version, and we saw his point of view. And so in this case it was a man, but it could be anybody. But the DM was, they have something called DM threat, where that allows you to put a certain amount of hazards in the way.
Yeah, so
or
basically
you can help the players too. You don't have to be antagonistic.
Any way you interact with the map spends threats. So it's a resource that you use to do pretty much anything.
And you get DM loot drops.
Right.
So like while we were watching, he got, I think it was a
swarm of zombies.
Skeleton horde or something, and he placed that. The rogue found a hidden door. They went in to get a bunch of loot, and he used that. The DM used his DM loot drop and put these zombies behind the players,
right,
like an ambush. It was pretty cool, and it seemed dynamic. The one worry that you were saying is
it seemed like he was working off a template and trying to do things as the player was working through the dungeon. And I'm like, well, if I was the player, I would just move so quickly that the DM wouldn't have time to do anything.
Yeah.
But something they said and would not elaborate further on
hinted
is
at
you could actually do campaign creation, so
Yeah.
I could have more control over the things I modify.
So in theory, this is our theory, and it would make sense.
Right.
Hopefully you'll be able to actually build a dungeon from scratch, or rearrange with pre-made pieces or something to that effect.
And everything won't just be pre-built that you modify, basically.
But
the thing that I wonder, is how deep can you go with that? Can you write every single line of dialogue? Can you insert your own VO? Like, how crazy does this get?
Yeah, they said every asset that is available for the single player campaign that they use, the DM will have access to. So hopefully,
Can you imagine doing tabletop adventures in video game form?
That's
my dream.
We could make our storyline in the game and then give it to people.
Ooh.
And they could be their own Hogger and Lilia and everything.
We're going to be rich.
Watch Tabletop Adventures
Weekly
at John's GameTrailers.
It's a great show.
It's a good show. All right, well,
that's all we have.
That's all the time we have for this particular video from GDC.
But more incoming.
More incoming. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.